I'd say I was hacked, but I'm honestly saying what's on my mind. And if you have a fucking problem with that, then unfollow me, assholes.
The Last of Us is a series that many hold dear to their hearts, but many also overly criticize for not meeting their hopes. Never have I seen a game in recent years that everyone loves but also hates so viciously, one that has divided a community as much as this one. It seems that especially nowadays gaming has just gotten so popular within the past decade, and it's to the point whenever any past game or new game has gotten traction this easily, it is overhyped and then ruined by expectations and dreams. Let me explain. In the years that I've been gaming, it only recently reached a level of overhype about 4 to 5 years ago. Think of every major AAA game or YouTube trend that has come out. All of them die within about a month or two. Call of Duty, Cyberpunk, Fall Guys, Among Us. All of these games suffered from overhype and letdown, and this is what happened to The Last of Us 2 as well. It's been about 2 years since the game came out, so no better time than now to discuss it, to see if I could change your mind about what you thought this game was. Starting off with the obvious, the game looks absolutely stunning. It gives us a grasp of the world that we're returning to with a casual horse ride through the beginning of the game. The Last of Us starts with a recap of the end of the last game, with just Joel and his brother talking about the choice he had to make and how hard it was for him to choose between the world being saved and what he sees as his new daughter. It establishes a connection between Joel and his brother we never really got to see within the first game. This works extremely well because it gives the player that feeling that Joel finally has his family back after losing everything he truly cared for, his daughter. The opening cutscene recapping the ending of the last game actually gives us a great perspective on Joel's thought process during his rescue. We actually see Joel think about his actions in just that split second of a frame. It actually gives us an insight of Joel's internal thinking and makes it even sadder to know, well, what happens to him after. We get this cute little scene between him and Ellie with the guitar, and it's just standard role model pupil writing. It's a connection that they share throughout the game to establish symbolism through the guitar. It's really cool having the ability later on in the game to just play the guitar whenever you want, and not just on a gameplay level, but on a storytelling level. And that even though Joel's gone, Ellie still has the ability to remember him fondly through the connection they had together through the guitar. Getting into the introduction of the gameplay, we're told that Ellie and Joel have had something between them, leaving more to be desired by the player. This is a good way to tease the audience by not actually revealing too much, but just telling just enough for people to know what's going on. The way the gameplay starts off is really intuitive with each of the characters. Ellie gets a fun little snowball fight between her and some kids, which really does resonate with me quite well, as we never really got to see Ellie interact with anyone else beforehand, that weren't trying to kill her at least. Her sequence reflects her character well, but also teaches the player how to stay mobile against a larger amount of enemies than you. Whilst the gameplay introduction for Abby, on the other hand, is her slaughtering a bunch of zombies, the developer clearly wants you to see the obvious split between these two characters early on in the game. The criticism for the gameplay in The Last of Us does not make any fucking sense whatsoever. The gameplay for The Last of Us 2 is pretty much the same as the first Last of Us, but has been more refined and smoothed out. The hate coming from it is saying that the developers were too lazy and they didn't innovate enough for this new game. But didn't the gameplay for the first Last of Us get praise all across the board? The Last of Us gameplay was so good, everything about the first game flowed so well, and it felt like an art. So why would they change it for this new game? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why would you already want to change rock-solid gameplay mechanics for a new one that could potentially just break the entire fucking game completely? Then you have these fucking brain-dead incels who just hate on the Abby's part of the gameplay because they just didn't like her because she killed Joel. There's no real reason as to why the players would like Ellie's part but don't like Abby's part. They only hate it because Abby was the one who killed Joel.
I disagree with this guy. Not just because I'm mad, just disagree. Her side of the story had no actual goal. It was small piece of story that don't connect together that much, and you're just going somewhere because the character said we're going there. And this is happening, and we don't know why. It's just like these small little things are just to make a story almost. That's why it didn't feel good. Because there wasn't a higher goal. It didn't feel like you had a vocation or something. You just feel like you were just walking through the game because the game told you so.
A common argument that is made is that Abby gets all the cool weapons and Ellie gets shit. Which is true, I would say, but I think they're overlooking the reasoning as to why. Abby is obviously going to get cooler shit because it fits her character better and the gameplay for her story. And it's not like Ellie's going to be given all this shit because she's just a regular ass person. It's not like she works for the military like Abby does. Remember that part in the first game where you had to play as Ellie? That was so fucking cool. Not just because the level design was amazing, but because you really had to get innovative with how you killed and worked in that environment. That's what the developers were trying to achieve with this game. Ellie is cool because she could think on her feet and be innovative with how she kills her enemies. See, look at this gameplay. I missed some of my shots, so I was forced to improvise and change up my approach. And again here, I had no ammo, so I was forced to use smoke bombs. Having a crutch weapon or a mechanic for the player to rely on is boring game design. Aside from the hate, every aspect of the gameplay is great. It flows so well. The combat works phenomenally, melee attacking feels good, every dodge and hit you do connects beautifully, especially with the PS5's new haptic controller and graphics. Everything you play makes you feel like you're there. Versing human characters works on a much more deeper level.
If an enemy gets his arm blown off, he'll cry out in agony.
If you catch one off guard, they'll fumble around for a bit. Killing an enemy's ally will sometimes cause them to cry out their name. You could take hostages and use them as human shields to get the first shot in. Sometimes they'll even plead for mercy. Or you could throw a brick to lead clickers over to enemies. Everything about the combat makes the gameplay feel realistic. The only way I could describe it is that it feels like you're living within the game. The flow of moving around your environment all looks like a cutscene, and the cutscene transitions seamlessly to gameplay, just like in God of War. No other game has combat that works just this well. Everything in this game is detailed. And this game can actually get creepy. There are so many times within this game where it genuinely made me jump or not want to play this section because of how creepy or stress-inducing it was. The horror from this game derives from anxiety, and that's what makes the improvisation of this game so much better. I said this at the start, but I just have to reiterate. The environments in this game are absolutely breathtaking. Everything just feels so grand, and it's really on the same level as most fantasy games, and actually even better in some cases. This is the part of the game that truly shines. The settings, the places, and the scope of everything just looks so real. The land looks worn and lived in wherever you go. The Last of Us 2 really nailed the environmental storytelling, and I would genuinely prefer this than to Doom Eternal's. Also, just a quick side note, I really love this scene. Not just because of how good it looks, but if you could listen carefully, you could actually hear Abby fighting the Rat King in the background.
I'm not giving up, my friend.
It's just a little detail I thought was really cool. Nothing as of today has beaten the absolutely stunning environment of The Last of Us. Maybe God of War 2 when that finally releases. But just look at some of these locations. Everything is interesting. As compared to the first Last of Us, it pales in comparison to Last of Us 2's locations. And it actually goes well with all recent games that have been released. Everything is just grey and blue and boring as shit. It looks like a Captain America movie. Everything just looks like it was color graded to blue. All I'm saying is, if they're able to make California look better than what it actually looks like now, you've won in my eyes. First we have the infamous E3 kiss scene between Ellie and Dina, and this won't be too long because I really shouldn't have to explain myself with this one, but I don't know why this was so controversial towards the beginning of the game's life cycle. I get the whole, oh, they're trying to shove LGBT shit down our throats, but I feel like if a lesbian kiss seriously had you mad about the game before it even released, then I think you seriously need to reevaluate your standards a bit. And what's not okay is that people were already preemptively hating the game before it released because it had LGBT themes in it. I'm not one to advocate for anything that gets put in a game really, because it's always up to the game developer to put whatever story they like in the game, but I think that people already preemptively hating the game because it had Ellie predominantly showing her as a lesbian and a transgender child in it. I think the problem is not with the game itself, but with the actual people that are mad at the game.
This is later integrated with the really awesome arc with Abby and Lev. It's such a cool idea having someone like Lev, a transgender cultist child, grow up in a religious cult during an apocalypse. It's such a cool story that it's good enough to be its own movie if it wanted to.
Well, why do you think he did it now? Shaved his head, I mean.
Last week, he got assigned his role in the community. He wanted to be a soldier like me, but they decided he was to be a wife to one of the elders.
Poor kid.
The thing I find so funny about the storyline is that if it was put into a movie and it wasn't in the context of The Last of Us 2, it would probably get praise everywhere. All the review companies would say it would be a masterpiece. Everything about that storyline is just so integrated and detailed. I keep saying that a lot, but it really is. Like, honestly, you have to believe me. This storyline with Abby and Lev is like some of the best in the entire game. And I don't know why this got the brunt of most of the hate in The Last of Us 2, because it's the most compelling story. And a lot of people say it takes away from Ellie's story, but it seriously doesn't. And I'll explain that later. Abby's story with Lev increases the character depth. You could clearly tell the writers were proud of this storyline because it doesn't just make Abby's story better, it enhances the entire story. Abby is the main antagonist slash protagonist for this game, and this is by far where all the hate gets directed to. So, in this early scene when we see Abby, she's just on the outskirts of the town, and the environment she's in gets to show us what kind of character she is. She's cold, brutal, jealous, and seems to be quite naive. Now I know some of those, especially the last one, you're a bit confused about, but she did try and take on the entire town on her own, and I have no doubt she would have tried to at least, if she didn't get lucky and stumble across Joel.
You ignorant fuck.
You could tell by her fighting style that the word brutal is pretty accurate. I mean, just look at it. But for the early player, this may seem a little odd and just a stereotypical bullshit to have the villain as some evil, cynical person with no mercy. But when you hear more about her backstory, you could see where all that hate comes from. This is just the start of her character arc, and for the main antagonist, it's clearly setting up for her to have a change of heart within her arc. Again, this is basic writing seen in almost every story-driven game, which again leaves me confused as to why the hate is so clearly derived from her. Even later on, she gets asked why she's even bothering to try and save Lev and his sister.
Abby, why are you helping us?
Lev asked me the same thing. I guess you don't deserve this. But also, I needed to. I had to.
I think this is a really neat way to show her change of heart, and although at this point she probably still doesn't regret killing Joel, she could at least understand why he did what he did. Alright, I know you've all been waiting for this, and many people use the argument, how can I support this game after they treated Joel? And it's very simple. This isn't Joel's fucking game. Look, I get it. Joel's an important character, and yes, the game might have been better if he were in it more, but this is very clearly Ellie's game. I mean, come on, she's on the front cover of the game. She was in all the gameplay trailers, and she was even in the teaser. It was very obvious she was mad about something at least relating to Joel.
I'm gonna find. And I'm gonna kill. Every last one of them.
And if you didn't think Joel was going to die in this game, you're an idiot. Having the mentor character die is a trope that is used in every media outlet. It's obvious that Joel's death served as the driving force of this game, and without it you wouldn't really have a game. But I do think the 2 flashback scenes with Joel would have been nice to play before his death. I feel like it would have added more weight, and they're actually good introduction to how the gameplay works. Although I still like the snowball scene as an opening introduction to the gameplay. I know the other argument is that they didn't have to do him dirty like that, and I completely get that. Having Joel's legs go bye-bye and his head used as a Tiger Woods tee is pretty fucking shocking. But it's to establish an arc for both Abby and Ellie. It sets Ellie down the road for her quote-unquote revenge mission, but in the process she loses everyone she cares about, and Abby realizes the consequences of her actions and loses everyone she loves as well. It's symbolic. These two people who both start off their journeys for revenge realize the deeper roots of their action causes more problems than what they actually solve. But we as the player see towards the end of the game, it's not a revenge story, but a story about love, loss, and forgiveness. First of all, the argument that's made the most is that Ellie's character gets shafted for Abby's character, and this is just the stupidest thing I've ever fucking heard. Apart from this moment in the game, there's no real point where each of both these characters' storylines overtake each other. Although I gave praise shown in Abby's part of the game, it doesn't mean that Ellie's is bad either. I think it's super compelling seeing Abby take action into her own hands because she believes it's what Joel would have done too. I love the little details that are displayed to show how menacing and scary the main characters are. I didn't even mention this when I talked about Abby, but going up against Tommy is one of the coolest scenes in the game. It adds to the reputation that the fans hold to these characters. Ellie and Abby's stories both play out around the same time, and Ellie's character arc is way more compelling than Abby's, even though they're both pretty good. It's super cool knowing that both these storylines play out at the same time. And again, with the whole weapons situation, I think it fits Ellie's character better that she gets these weapons because it actually adds to her character being so good. Plus, Abby gets pretty much the same weapons as Ellie, it's just with different skins and like different fire rates. And the flamethrower is only really useful for the boss fight, so I'm not sure why that argument's even made again. And for the most part, Ellie gets better craftables anyway compared to Abby. But it's less so about the gameplay and more about the story, and it has to do with the ending. And again, I'll explain more in detail when I get to it, but I think the hate towards Ellie's character is unjustified because of the crazy revenge mission she goes on. But it's clear a lot of people didn't pay attention because she says right at the start of the game that Joel would have done the same if it were any of them. But this game is not a story about revenge. For the most part, Ellie has a hard time killing the majority of people she runs into. That includes Nora.
I made her talk. It's okay.
She only really cares about Abby, and the rest of the time she doesn't even really seem to want to kill the others. It's only due to dire circumstances that they die, but that's not to say that they weren't all her fault. Ellie went through and learned all the same experiences Joel had in the end, and even though she tried her best not to, she turned out just like him. And she wasn't the only character to either. When Abby goes on her mission to kill Joel, it seems like most of the people she's with doesn't even want to be there either. Even Owen says they should turn back, although that was mainly due to other reasons. Every time we see these characters talk about it, they all seem to kind of regret what they did, or more accurately, how they did it.
I don't know. I guess I was shook by Jackson, too. You don't think Joel deserved what he got? I think he deserved worse. I just wish I didn't take part in it.
Where the fuck is she?
It's abundantly clear by the end of the story both have a change of heart and actually switch. Ellie goes on the mission to hunt down someone across the country whilst Abby just wants to protect the kid she's looking after. Remind you of anything? Abby in a way has become Joel. The game even draws a parallel to it in the epilogue. Although Ellie stoops to the level of Abby and goes on her way to track her down, she doesn't go through with it, because Ellie's better than Abby. Because during that fleeting moment when she has the chance to kill Abby, she sees Joel. Not just because Joel probably wouldn't want her to go through with it, but also because Ellie recognizes the parallels between them now. Why else would we have seen this scene now instead of earlier in the game? We see it because it tells us about forgiveness, that although Joel did a terrible thing, Ellie is willing to forgive him, and that Ellie should do the same with Abby. Love is a key theme throughout this game, and it emphasizes the plot more than anything else. It's established very early on that Dina and Ellie actually have a strong connection, and you can tell just by the way they interact with each other. Love being such a staple theme in the game makes it so much harder to play when a character just dies without any remorse. At the start of the game, the player finds out that Dina and Jesse had broken up about a week before the game takes place, but you can still see the connection between the two even before they realize Dina is pregnant. This goes especially with Abby. We see that there's something between her and Owen like a past relationship, but it's emphasized that Owen has moved on whilst Abby is still on that love train for him. It's only later on that we see Abby realizes that her love for Owen is misplaced and her true love is for her new family, Lev. Abby's story with Lev adds to the story because it actually gives her a chance to reevaluate her choices, and we as the player see that. Not only does she find that parenthood is enlightening for her character, but also helps her understand Joel's perspective. Before, she could have never understood why Joel did what he did, but as her story with Lev continues, you could really see the similarities between her and Joel's stories. And then there's Joel. Probably the most important but least emphasized point in this game is Joel and Ellie's connection. This is because we've already seen it in the first game, so when we hear about it in this one, it's only told from the perspective which is Ellie's. This is a really cool decision, especially after seeing the ending of the game, where we see how deep Joel's love for Ellie actually is.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
This is really nice to see because we never really got to know how this moment went down until right at the end. It gives such a relief knowing that Joel and Ellie's last interaction is a good one, knowing at least Ellie would forgive Joel, not just Joel but herself too. The symbolism for loss in the story is shown throughout, but loss is also tied in with love. You cannot experience loss without caring or loving, it's just nature. So when characters are killed off, they all have tremendous weight to them, because we had a long time to get to know each and every one of them. Loss in the story is not just displayed through death, but symbolically as well. Tom is a phenomenal marksman but loses his sight in one eye and his mobility in his leg. Ellie is a great guitarist but loses her ability to play. Everything has weight to it. This idea of loss makes you question the motivations of Ellie. Her seeking revenge allows her to let go of the loss she experienced, but in the end lost even more due to her actions. Same goes for Abby. Abby travelled across half the country to get revenge on Joel, and by the end, everyone she cared about died. And the notion of loss plays into the idea of forgiveness. Not everything can be forgiven, but everything can be lost. Forgiveness in this game is not just a story trope, it's a theme. This is so clearly evident from the final climax when Ellie gets a sudden flash of Joel when she's drowning Abby. It's not just a cheap, oh look here's Joel kind of thing, it's actually flashing back to a conversation they had about Ellie trying to forgive Joel. So when Ellie looks down at Abby the way Abby looked down at Joel, she sees something, not just herself, but Joel. Abby will probably never be forgiven in Ellie's eyes, but when Abby comes to the understanding of actual love, she understands Joel's actions. She doesn't forgive, but she regrets. Now knowing the hardship of being a parent, Ellie sees this too. She sees the parent who lost everything and a child who was lost. It's poetic in a way knowing that Ellie has the chance to lower herself even further to Abby's previous self, but with the foresight, she doesn't. The story isn't just about revenge, but growth. This is the reason everyone hated this game, having the wrong mentality that this game would end with Ellie killing Abby. It ends with her forgiving Abby and giving Lev the same chance Joel did for her. Ellie returns home seeing the roots of her actions have sprouted into vines most survivors would have become acquainted with. The pain she caused not just for herself but also others around her. Joel teaching Ellie guitar is not just a cute bonding moment for both characters, it establishes a connection. One that can be passed down, taught, or remembered. Seeing Ellie and Joel reconnect by her playing the guitar even after he's gone is symbolic. She had the chance to be happy with her new family. She could have lived on, but instead she decided to go out and stoop to the same level as Abby by traveling hundreds of miles just to kill her. And in the end, she lost her new and her old family. Her last true connection with Joel, their shared talent for the guitar, was gone. Their memories are now just faded, forgotten, and overgrown, like the cities they roam and the streets they cross. Just like vines on an old empty house. Hey guys, welcome to the end card. This is actually the first time I've done one of these before, and I felt like I should just explain myself a bit with this video. I wrote the script for this video literally like 3 months after this game came out, which is weird because I didn't even have a channel back then, but I planned on doing it ages ago. So pretty much 3 months after the game released, I planned on making this video because the hate was so prevalent back then, and all the points I brought up in this video were points that were prevalent back then as well. But as it went on and I struggled to find a proper editing software, and I was able to get Premiere Pro, actually recording and editing this all took like 2 days. I just got stuck on the very last paragraph because before I started recording the final conclusion to this video, I saw Video Game Donkey's video reviewing this game, which he pretty much made all the exact same points that I made in this video, so it kind of put me off on even releasing it in the first place. But I felt like my opinion was valid enough to release it, and I feel like that my video was at least different enough to his for me to release it anyway. And then I rewatched Jacksepticeye's playthrough of the game, which I completely forgot about, and when I rewatched it, a lot of the points he made about the Joel flashbacks were points I brought up in this video as well. And then the XQC clip I put at the front of the video was just a little joke, but it was him reacting to Video Game Donkey's review. I don't know, it was just really confusing for me because I felt like I couldn't release this video because all of the points that I made had already been brought up before by bigger YouTubers. So I hope you understand, like, that was the whole situation. I'd literally been sitting on this video for 2 years, and I did it all within 2 to 3 days, and I got stuck on the last paragraph for like 2 months because I was afraid to release this review. So yeah, I hope you understand, but I hope you like the video. The video is the longest one I've ever done. It took a long time to edit, and the audio editing was pretty hard to do. It might be different because at the time I'm recording this, I'm using the audio that was actually used within the game, and because YouTube has pretty much copy striked every single video I've released so far, I might have to change it. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you later.